You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. Before we get into today's conversation with Nicholas Di Lorenzo, I just wanted to remind you that I'm currently conducting a listener survey for the show. If you could please fill out my listener survey for a chance to win a free 1-hour production coaching call with me, that would be amazing. You can find a link to the survey in the show notes of this episode or by visiting my website, www.secretsonics.co. I'll draw the raffle at noon next Sunday, July 5th, Jerusalem time. So make sure to have it filled out by then for your chance to win this call. That's it for now. Let's dig into the episode with Nicholas Di Lorenzo. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Nicholas Di Lorenzo. Nicholas is a mixing and mastering engineer and the owner of Panorama Mixing and Mastering in Melbourne, Australia. He strives to maintain a high pedigree of craftsmanship for both his colleagues and the clients he works with on every project that passes through the doors of Panorama. Nicholas actually reached out to me and told me he really likes the show, and so it was super cool of him. So welcome to Secret Sonics, Nicholas.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, mate. I really appreciate you taking the time out for us to rock and roll here. And let's have some fun for people listening.
Absolutely. All about it. So tell us a bit about how you got started getting involved in production.
It was just out of necessity. It was like, I'm in a band, I'm playing, I want to hear myself through speakers. So let's figure a way to use some SingStar mics and whatever I had available to get it in. That's just as raw as it gets.
When did you decide, like, this is what I'm going to do instead of playing in a band?
I don't think I ever made that decision. I think that decision was sort of made for me because I was doing it for my own band. Then other bands and other friends and other musicians were like, "Oh, record me, help me out with this. I've got this demo." So it was other people made the decision for me. It wasn't by my doing that I consciously said I ever wanted to be in this position that I am. It's just a happening of things and the way things panned out.
So you just kind of like, you're playing in the band and all of a sudden you're like getting into Pro Tools and it just develops over time.
Nah, Pro Tools is for pros. We were in Audacity back then.
Oh,
that's where it started out. If you could run Audacity, you're basically the king of the town. Especially when would have this been? Like 11 years ago. It's a long time ago. So that's where it starts.
Yeah, Audacity was my first DAW. I feel like, it's like the only free PC DAW.
It's the gateway drug to getting hooked on Pro Tools eventually. You end up doing harder DAWs as you go along.
So how did you get into, so now you're like doing mixing and mastering. Like, how did that happen? How'd you go from like recording and producing into all that?
Well, you're not going to believe me, but I went from recording and producing, out of high school into uni, bands around me, to the point where I realized I was really shit at it. Like, I ended up getting an internship at a studio and realized just how fucking god-awful crap I was at it. And I'm like, fuck, this isn't going to be a career for me. I'll try something else. I'll do everything and anything else, but I want to be in the music industry. And I meant literally it didn't have to do with audio. Like, I would be at publishers, I would be doing bitch fucking letterboy errands, you name it. Like, I think there was even one point where I was just fucking emailing out spam for an A&R as an intern. Like, that was a fucking, that's how, like, I just wanted to be in this industry. And then by pure luck, scored an assistant position at a mastering studio, had no clue what the fuck it was. It worked out that I connected with it. I was actually good at it by an accident. And then same sort of deal where people were asking me to mix their records. They saw that I was interning. They're like, hey, you're at this place. Can you master my records? Then I had a freelance business whilst I was interning where, I'd intern during the day and then on my off days, people would be coming to my place to get their records mastered in a bedroom that was really small and where the only seating I had for my clients was on my bed.
Yeah. Sounds like my first studio.
Yeah.
Kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, so that's how I made the change. I made the change by completely realizing I was shit at recording and accidentally jumped into it the same way I accidentally jumped into recording.
Nice. And so like mastering and mixing really suits your personality. Like, what do you love about it?
I'll be honest, at the very start, it was purely the hours. I hated staying back at recording studios late. I hated doing live stuff and being out till all hours of the day. The fact that I could have a relatively 9 to 5, or what I thought at the time was a 9 to 5, because now I work fucking ludicrous hours. But it just was good because I wasn't being dictated by when artists could fit in studio time after their day jobs, or doing sessions on weekends or shit like that. It was like, okay, you can come in Monday to Friday, you can work, sane hours, so to speak, and still have a part in this big thing we call the music industry. That was the initial sort of latch into it.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I feel like people that get into audio are often just so obsessed and hooked on it that they can't really do anything else. They don't have other hobbies. Like,
yeah, I look, put it this way. As I said, when I realized I was shit at recording, I was going to try everything fucking out there was in the industry. Like, everything until something sort of sunk and sat with me. It wasn't the fact that I loved audio so much. It was just by chance that I had an assistant position. I tried it out, and that sort of snowballed by accident to the point where, hey, I started doing it, like really weird accident.
That's awesome. Well, so how does your workflow look these days? When you're working with artists, and also we could talk about mixing and mastering.
Workflow is can you go a bit more specific on that? Because I don't want to blab on.
Yeah, so let's talk about onboarding artists that you work with. How do you find the artists that you work with? And or how do they find you?
So they tend to find me through word of mouth. That's the first thing. So the discovery process is, I've worked on a record they know, I've worked with a label they know, I've worked with an artist or producer they know, or an engineer they know, or it's the actual producer or engineer onboarding me to work with them. That's the discovery process. A very strong word of mouth is what has always worked for me. That's getting them there. Then obviously we all sort of do it in this industry. We have to have a discussion with them. I'm usually just trying to get them onto the phone. If something's going to take more than 5 sentences in an email, I don't even bother with it. I'm like, cool, that sounds great. I can't unpack this via email. Let's jump on a call, because I don't want to leave anything up to interpretation. I really want to fucking, pull as much information as I can, because I think part of onboarding a client is more about understanding them than trying to sell yourself. So the more we can talk, the more we can start to understand the scope of it. I will take notes. I'll write like crazy the whole time throughout the call. And then the day after, I'll send them an email going, hey, this is everything we chatted about. Did I miss anything? And I tell them they're going to get that email. And when they get that email, if I didn't miss anything, they go, yep, that's all good. Then usually at a few dot points throughout those emails, I've dropped, time frames and guidelines and prices. So they're already on board with what's going on, rather than going back and forth via email, answering micro questions. I can look at the bigger picture that way.
Wow. So you basically have this big revelation conversation, and you figure out what they're about, like what their goals are, what they want it to sound like, how loud they want it to be, all that kind of stuff. And then you take notes, and then you just feed it back to them, and hopefully, which you usually get it right,
Yeah. Well, the thing is, even before I'm finishing up the call, I go, hey, before we finish up this call, let me just make sure I got this right. I'll read through everything, and I'll ask, did I get anything wrong? And on the spot, they'll be able to give me feedback or interject anything that I might have missed. So by the time I'm sending up an email, it's pretty much the third time we're revisiting the same things they've told me or asked me, or I've answered for them. And it's done in with very little friction, because typically something like this I used to do it via email. It'd be like, you email them back. When can you get it done? I can get it done then. What's your rate? This is my rate. Okay. Well, how do you need the stems? Blah, blah, blah. And it just, it can go on forever. As this way, it's like, fuck it.
Yeah. And people take a long time to respond to emails also. Like,
sometimes they take too long. Yeah. Sometimes they take too short, but, it's just the fact that, as I said,
it's a shitty communication, method, basically.
Yeah, anything more than 5 sentences, straight to the call. Even if I'm in the middle of a project, if they send me revision notes more than 5 sentences long, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I respect what you're saying. I'm not going to respond to it now. Let's jump on a call.
Yeah, man. So tell me about your approach to mastering. Are you listening to the whole song top to bottom? Is that the first thing you do, or is there anything else that you kind of get started with?
So I always actually don't even. It's not even. That's not even where it starts. It starts because I don't even put a booking in my invoicing system. I don't even put a calendar date or an event in my calendar until I've heard the mix. So it's like until I've heard the mix and I've signed off on it and it's banging and there's nothing that other person can improve, I don't put anything down. So that's where it really starts for me. There are a few exceptions to that. Labels, particular producers, and particular engineers who I have working relationships with.
Yeah.
There are just certain things I can't be too idealistic about. I can't circumnavigate the deadlines of a label or a manager. Because I want to bring the sub baseline down 1 decibel because I'll just be able to squeeze it that little more. I can't take those sort of liberties. So in those sort of circumstances, I sort of have to manage it myself. But that's where it starts. It starts in the QC phase. Then once it's QC'd and it's booked in for mastering, I'll listen to it all the way through again, get a sort of vibe on it, and just work where it takes me. Each master sort of takes me to a different place, or it takes itself to a different place.
Yeah, the song guides the process.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't like to lock it into anything particularly.
Are you going out of the box?
Yep. Then going out of the box, back in. So going through if you want to get gear nerdy, I'll be really quick about it. And if you want to ask questions, You can then after. It's going out of the Antelope converters, the high voltage EQ6S. If you know that unit, James Frizzetto, if you don't know it, really good EQ unit. It's built here in Melbourne by a friend of mine. I went to school with his brother as well. That's being sold all around the world now. It's incredible how it's taken off. I remember prototyping it. Anyway, that EQ6S, then through a Manly Varimu, then through a commissioned piece, which I commissioned James to do for me, the Barry Porter EQ. And then that goes through to a TC finalizer back into the box, and more magic happens there.
Like limiting and
all that
clipping
crap
and stuff like that. Beautiful. And you told me that you do mixing and mastering. How do you manage to wear both of those hats? I'm assuming you don't master the projects you mix as well.
It's really funny. I sort of have, whenever I'm mixing, I actually, anything that leaves this studio, this is sort of philosophy I have. If your client's going to listen to something and they fall in love with it, they have to be able to release it there and then. So even the first mix I send out is mastered, because if they listen to it and they love it so much they want to put it out, I want them to make sure that they put out that exact version. Now, the reason being is because I've had people release just mixes that haven't been mastered. And this is why I do that. Now, that said, I'm not mastering everything I mix. They're listening to it, we're having a conversation, because that's usually a question that comes up. Oh, are you going to master this track? Is it included in the fee? Are we having another mastering engineer on board? I usually say, hey, I'm mastering every version you get, but you're paying me for my knowledge. And if my knowledge guides us to say, hey, we can get more out of having a mastering engineer on this project, that's exactly where I'm going to guide you to. So I always make sure that option is open, because sometimes I get to the end of a mix and I'm like, yeah, this sounds fucking good. The client signed off on it, but there's a little bit more we can sort of bring to the table, having this person come on board or this person come on board. And sometimes I'm even getting the mastering engineer on board earlier on in the project, where I'm like, I know at the end of this I'm just going to be burnt and I'm going to need a fresh perspective, so you're coming on board.
Yeah. How are you able to sometimes, I guess, be objective enough to master the mix versus, I guess, when you don't have that objectivity anymore? Because I found that I never have not that I'm a mastering engineer, but I don't have the objectivity to be a mastering engineer on my own mixes, I
don't know. I know what sounds good in this room. I know when something's banging and hitting right, and pretty much from the start, I'm trying to get that sound straight away. Like I usually ask for the stems wet, so it's representing the production mix. I'm getting that production mix to sound much better by just tweaking the volumes, making sure that things are sitting more tighter, slamming it through a limiter and some compression and EQ, and getting it just to what I know works. And then I don't know, I know how things sound when they leave the studio. So it's not really about being objective or not. It's just that I know how shit should sound when it leaves here, and that's what I do.